All right, and we're live. We have Father Bob with us today. How are you doing, Father Bob?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I just have multiple questions. What led you to want to become a priest?
Oh boy, so we're back in 1992, and so I was working in the IT field here in Atlanta on a long-term computer project. I was living in Dunwoody. I was a member of All Saints Catholic Church, and I got involved in various types of kind of outreach activity with Hands on Atlanta, helping out with the parish youth group, Ronald McDonald House, just different types of things like that. And I just started to come to a realization where I just felt like whatever I did after work with one of those kind of volunteer service opportunities is what really fulfilled me. It wasn't that I developed a better code module or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but I just felt more fulfillment and purpose and making more of a difference. And I was like, you know what, I think that's what I really want to do with the rest of my life. And,
Definitely.
And so I started to initially just look into various types of outreach opportunities. And at first they weren't even Catholic. I mean, just like
Mm-hmm.
Care International and different things like that. And I was also involved at a prayer group at All Saints. And I was asking the people at the prayer group to pray for me because I was contemplating leaving my job and going
Mm-hmm.
to work full-time service for one of these organizations. And there was a mom that came up to me at the end of the night in the parking lot. She's like, "Have you ever thought about being a priest before?" And I laughed. It cracked me up because I literally had never entered my mind.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I don't know where I thought priests grew up on some remote island and were shipped in,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely wasn't like the life I had led. I just didn't feel, like I was priest material or even called to be a priest so much. But I guess she felt like she saw something in me, wanted to put the question out there to me to get me to think about it, discern, ask, is God calling me? And so at first I literally thought it was a joke, and I had never thought about it, but she did kind of plant a seed, and just over the coming weeks, coming months, she did make me kind of think about it, pray about that. I eventually met a former chaplain at Blessed Trinity, Father Tim Hepburn. Before he was chaplain at Blessed Trinity, he was actually a parochial vicar at the Cathedral of Christ the King downtown. And he was a young priest, graduate of Auburn, and he came by our prayer group to speak to our prayer group. And it was kind of the first time I had really met a young dynamic priest.
Mm-hmm.
Where I grew up in South Carolina, Irmo, South Carolina, we always had a parish where it was always a mission parish where the kind of the older priests, right when they're ready to retire, were sent, kind of like out to pasture, so to speak. And so that's just what I associated priesthood with, was just kind of old gray hair. But here was a young dynamic priest and who was on fire with love for Jesus and wanting to make a difference in the world. And there was something about him I was extremely attracted to. And I'm like, there was a couple of us there, and they were going out to Waffle House afterwards, and I'm like, "Can I come too?" And I just pounded him with questions like, what does a priest do all day? I just always see you guys on Sundays, but is that the only day of the week you work, or what do you do? And so he shared a little bit about his journey and his ministry and things like that, and so just from different spiritual reading and stuff, I was told you should have a spiritual director, and at that time I'd been in Atlanta for a couple months, and I hadn't really done that, and so I asked him to be my spiritual director, and then just working with him, praying with him over the course of the next year. Also, in the weeks and months ahead, one or two seminarians for the Archdiocese of Atlanta actually would participate in our prayer group and come by, and so I had a chance to go out to dinner and talk to some of them about how did you make that decision to feel like you were called to the priesthood and want to say yes, and just them sharing their stories, their journeys. I was like, well, maybe maybe it is a possibility. Maybe this isn't as far-fetched as I thought it was. And I can see, just from looking at the seminarians and Father Tim, there's many different types of people that are called to the priesthood, and you don't have to always be a rocket scientist or whatever. And so I over the next year and a half, kind of discerned, and then eventually you have to contact the vocation director of the Archdiocese of Atlanta, which is Father Don Kenny. Now I'm a senior Kenny. He's in Ireland doing ministry now, and he was the vocation director then. And so I gave him the number on the pamphlet, vocation director, and I dialed him, and it was like I kind of felt like I was calling the first girl I called, like when I was in sixth grade or whatever. And you get to like the fifth digit, and then you hang the phone up again and try again to get through all the digits. And but no, I went out to dinner with him, and he put my mind at ease, and put me through all the gauntlet, the interviews, and everything, and so.
Wow, that's a truly inspiring story. And we are truly blessed to have you as a priest here, Father Bob. And so where were you before you came to BT?
Before I came to BT, I was a college chaplain at a very small kind of startup Catholic liberal arts college, Wyoming Catholic College in Lander, Wyoming. It's about 3.5 hours southeast of Jackson Hole. And we're on the base of the Wind River Range. And I asked the Archbishop for a special assignment outside the diocese, which isn't typical for a diocesan priest. You normally spend all your ministry inside the diocese, the territory, which for me is the north half of Georgia, is the Archdiocese of Atlanta. But I found out about this opportunity, and I heard good things were happening out there. I love the outdoors. They have an integrated outdoor leadership program. And so I petitioned him, and he graciously allowed me to go out and serve a few years out there, and it was just absolutely incredible. But yeah, so got a chance to do some college ministry, and now we're back for high school.
Cool. And so what brought you to Blessed Trinity in particular?
So when I was coming back for Wyoming, there's kind of a personnel board of which Bishop Bernard Schlesinger is kind of the head of that, and they make recommendations to the Archbishop, and then he okays that or has them rethink the mix. And he recommended me. He gave me a call and said, "I want to recommend you to be a chaplain of Blessed Trinity High School." And I said, "Yeah, fantastic. I'd love to do that." And so I left there at college graduation in May, and drove across country, and then kind of checked in at the school in July, and then I got to meet the students, or met some of the football players, in practice over the summer, and then the rest of the students in August. But it's tough when you're somewhere, being somewhere for 5 years with a
Definitely.
very small group of students where you know everybody, and a lot of times their siblings from visits to the college, and then you come to a place with 1,000 students where you're the new kid on the block and you don't know anybody. And so initially it was a little bit of a shock, just trying to get to know people. But now after year 2, it's feeling building more and more rapport, feeling a little bit more like home.
All right. Well, we are out of time for the first part of this podcast, but thank you so much, Father Bob, for your time. And tune in tomorrow for the second part of this very interesting Get to Know You podcast with Father Bob.